right, team, let's get started here. Thank you for joining us this afternoon or morning, depending on where you are, right? 1 p.m. on the East Coast, 10 o'clock on the Pacific Coast. CareStack, in conjunction with Black Ops Management Solutions, is excited to host today's webinar, which is the second session of our two-part series. Today, we're going to focus on how do you increase patient confidence. In a moment or two, I'm going to turn it over to Lynn Campbell, who's going to act as our moderator and really general facilitator. If you guys want to advance to slide one here. Before we get started, I want to talk a little bit about CareStack. That's the organization I represent. And this is our one and only shameless plug. I promise you didn't tune in to hear a commercial on CareStack. And I think what's really important as a nascent company, many people aren't familiar with who or what CareStack is about. And so in a nutshell, or a very high level, we are a contemporary all-in-one cloud-based solution for the complete management of the dental practice. And we typically work with two types of clients. The first is the growing practice that's looking to offer a touch-free or contactless experience for both their patients and their staff in this new normal. And they see technology as enabling that, and they just don't know how to get there. They need some help. The second is the ambitious, visionary practice that's grown frustrated and aggravated by managing multiple different subscriptions to run their dental practice. And this provides for, a crushing overhead that really takes revenue away from generating activities. So an example would be one subscription for charting, another one for digital clipboard, another one for parking lot check-in. The list goes on and on. Two-way texting. You get the point. And these practices are frustrated. They don't run an IT firm, and frankly, they'd rather have this bundled. And so hopefully you fall into one of those two categories. And if that's the case, please visit us at carestack.com. And if you like, you can book a demo, or you can come to one of our virtual trade shows where we do group demonstrations. So I'm going to go ahead and transition over to Lynn Campbell, who's going to be, again, our moderator and facilitator for today. So Lynn, please take it away.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. And welcome everyone to our second webinar. As Jim made mention, I am the president and CEO of Black Ops Management Solutions. And to give you just a quick indication, those of you that do not know, Black Ops Management Solutions, we concentrate specifically at advising groups and dental support organizations, both their management and operations. We're equipped with innovative business techniques and client-focused strategies that build revenue, and specifically support you as you navigate through standard operating procedures, guidelines, things of that nature. Black Ops Management Solutions is appreciative to CareStack for the consistent support in navigating informal resources to our clients. COVID-19, it's changed the landscape of dentistry, and our dental practices will face multiple challenges as we're trying to reopen and get back to some form of new normalcy. It's crucial that you provide as a either management or doctor of your practice, staff and patient, the confidence to come back to your dental practice. And that, to address your questions, Black Ops Management Solutions and CareStack, jointly, we bring you this second part of our two-part webinar series. And as Jim made mention, confidence building for staff and patients. So today, it is with great pleasure, I'd like to introduce to you first and foremost, Chris Grimm. Chris, his IT experience is specifically in the dental industry. He's both the enterprise technology and information systems leader for all of Dental as well as the business unit leader for the IT services division known as Unlimited Dental IT. Chris, welcome.
Thanks, Lynn. Welcome, everybody, to our session today entitled 5 Questions You Should Be Asking Your IT Guy. Just to elaborate a little bit on what Lynn so graciously introduced me as. Yes, I'm actually the CIO of Dental Whale, and then I also run, as business unit leader, our Unlimited Dental IT, which is our external managed IT services division. We currently work with around 300 independent dental offices all over the country, providing IT services, security services, IT support for those dental offices. Today, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about 5 things that you should be asking your IT guy. Before I go into that, though, I have a couple questions that I think you should be asking yourself. Question number one is, the first thing I want you to think of is how much production is done per hour in your practice. Just hold that number, think about that, and then hold that number, and you're going to use that number in some of the discussion a little bit later on today. And then the second question is, how much does one IT issue really cost? Right now, you don't know that, but by the end of the discussion today, you'll have a pretty good indication of what an IT issue costs. So the first question that I want you to go back and ask your IT guys or ask your IT team is, do you provide 24-hour server and workstation monitoring? It's a real simple question. We're not talking 24-hour around-the-clock service, not 24-hour support, just basic 24-hour server and workstation monitoring. And the reason for that is that the average server lifespan is about 3 to 5 years. Most servers that are used in independent dental offices right now are around 8 years old. The average failure rate is 5% in the first year, and that increases up to 20% within the first 5 years. So if they aren't monitoring your servers, if they aren't actively keeping track of what's happening with your server, you're at risk of your server failing, hardware failure, or memory leak coming up without you knowing it. So what should be happening is they should be monitoring the servers, logging tickets every time the server cuts out, every time it loses power, as the hard drive begins to fill up. They should be getting tickets and being able to make changes to the server, to make perform maintenance on the server, and have that ready and accomplished for you so that you can not be hit with a catastrophic failure in the middle of a production day. The second question is, what happens if you do lose your server? What happens if you go back to work today and you lose your server midday? I know it's a horrible thing to imagine, but it does happen. It happens a lot. And so one of the things, the answer should be that they have a backup strategy. It's called a 3-2-1 backup strategy. And you can take this back to your IT team or back to your IT provider and tell them this is what you want so that they can set this up for you. But basically, you'll have 3 places that your data is stored, 2 of them in separate locations and 1 of them offsite. That way, if something happens to your server, just a hard drive failure, you have a local backup that you can immediately move over to a new server. If something happens to your actual facility, to the actual location, you have a cloud backup that's clean that you can put onto a new server and be able to work from. So this is industry standard. This is IT standard backup best practices. So your IT team should be able to do this for you, no problem. The third question you should be asking your IT guy is, what are you doing to protect my patient data from ransomware? Most likely, if you're using an IT support company, they're going to say, well, we offer support, not security. And that's not a bad thing. It's just you need to be made aware that that is what they're providing. If they are providing security or if they aren't, what you want to tell them is that you want to manage antivirus on every computer. And not just something that you go to Walmart and pick up, McAfee or whatever those are. You want a strong industry standard managed antivirus like ESET, SentinelOne, Bitdefender, one of these type products that are constantly scanning, they're constantly updating. Viruses are very well known to mutate and change over time. So every time that ESET or SentinelOne comes up with a fix or patch, the bad guys are out there working strategically against them. So that's why you want something managed so that it's constantly kept up to date and is pushing through to your endpoint so that they can prevent infection. The second thing that you'll want is, for your backup strategy, you'll want some sort of ransomware detection. There are a lot of good products on the market right now. And basically what happens is, if you get an infection in your server, the ransomware detection will prevent backing up those infected files so that you end up with 2 clean backups offsite and local, so that you can restore and not be backing up the antivirus to the cloud or to your local backup. And then another best practice, and this is a little bit more expensive, but it's called a monitoring, detection, and response system. An MDR system is actively scanning 24/7, looking for anomalies on your network, anomalies in your data, looking for impossible logins. For instance, if you logged into your server from Paris and then 20 minutes later log into it from Brazil, then it would start shutting things down and sending alerts because those are impossible logins. It'll also check the network traffic and make sure you're not getting heavy amounts of traffic to known locations where ransomware or where the bad actors stay. It'll immediately send alerts. They're backed typically by what's called a security operations center, where you have 24-hour monitoring. These guys guys and girls are security experts. They can look at these things and immediately recognize it as being something bad and submit a ticket to your IT team and allow them to mitigate. Then the fourth question, and this is probably the hardest question for your IT team to answer, is what are you doing to bring value to my practice? And if they can't answer that, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It just needs to initiate a discussion with that IT team, and so that you and the team are aware of what value they're bringing. So some of the things they may want to talk about are recorded incidents, equipment health, your planned future IT spend, and they're able to get those things by being engaged in your IT systems. They're doing the 24-hour monitoring. They're monitoring your tickets. They're working your tickets every day. So those people are able to look at those things and let you know what you need to do to continue to build your IT system. A couple of things that I want to bring to your attention is just a couple of simple facts. The fact that the average American worker loses 48 minutes of productivity per day due to slow technology. That's one of the reasons that we consistently have the network monitoring, that we consistently have these discussions with them about what value they're bringing. Please take this back and do some numbers. And this is where I want to go back to the second question that I asked you. How much does an IT issue cost? This will actually give you that number. So if you're doing $1,000 production an hour and you're down for a half hour, it costs you $500 just to be down, not including what you're paying the IT team. So take these numbers back, run them through what you have, and you'll start to see what the value of your IT uptime and the cost of downtime could be. The final question I have that I want you to ask your IT guy is, when was their last HIPAA security risk assessment? Now, I'm not talking about your HIPAA security risk assessment, but I'm talking about your dental IT guy's security risk assessment. I'm sure that you guys have had one in the last year, right? But the IT guy should have one every year as well as a business associate. HIPAA requires that we maintain a chain of trust. And that goes for everyone all the way back to your cloud provider, all your IT team, your business, your billing, insurance, claims processing teams, your patient scheduling teams. All of those are business associates. They have access to patient data, even if it's intermittent. And they should also be doing annual security assessments as well. So you want to make sure that anyone who's supporting your practice is actually following the same compliance guidelines that you are. And then a few more things. These are just basic comments or facts that I want you guys to remember as you go into the rest of today. But backing up your patient data to an external hard drive and taking it home with you, it's not a disaster recovery plan. That's just backing up your data and taking it home with you. Communicating with patients via Gmail, Yahoo, AOL, Hotmail, or any other free email service is not HIPAA compliant. And it's not just not compliant, but the minute you send PHI via those Gmail accounts, it's actually a HIPAA breach. Spending a few more dollars per month to properly secure monitoring care for your largest investment is not an option. It's actually sound business practice. And your annual security risk assessments are not just for you. All of your business associates should be having them as well. That's really all I have today. I want to turn this back over to Lynn and let him, I know I went through that really fast, but hopefully we have some questions at the end.
Chris, thank you for walking us through this. And I think what was evident here, and we're going to get the questions for sure, is, well, how does this IT have anything to do with gaining confidence, if you would, from our patient base? And first and foremost, I want to just indicate that we do need to understand exactly what is our IT service doing. If in fact we're using a service, if we're internally doing our own IT, where are we? What's going on? For an example, we think Gmail, well, Gmail is HIPAA compliant, but that's actually the G Suite that you're having to pay for. So now that we're finding ourselves more in a virtual environment where we are utilizing so much from a virtual setting, we also saw ourselves, those with servers, having some access problems when we first had to close down offices and trying to operate, if you would, remotely. So it's important to know, first and foremost, where are we with our IT team and what's going on there? And then second from that, then start to build those confidence and being able to speak to our patient base very confidently when we are asked about HIPAA compliance and we're asked about transferring information back and forth, especially when we're trying to do new processing paperwork for a new patient, new client, if you would. That's important that they're very feeling very confident and safe to do that. So Chris, again, thank you for sharing that. As we can, let's move forward. I'd like to introduce Tim Kelley. Tim Kelley is one of the founders of TNT Dental. That is the #1 creator of custom websites and marketing strategies for dentists. We've utilized Tim in many of our relationships with our clients. TNT Dental is a leading expert in helping dental practices grow. And with that, Tim, welcome. I know you're going to share with us quite a bit about increasing patient confidence and getting that patient back into our practice now that we're reopening. So Tim, take it away.
Well, thank you, Len. I appreciate that very much, and I'm honored to be here. And yeah, I think there's probably no greater issue facing dentistry right now, probably, than how to increase patient confidence. And you know, TNT Dental is a marketing company for dentists. We're in the business to help dental practices get new patients, and we've been in business, as you might be able to tell from my gray hair, a little over 20 years now. And I'll tell you, of all the issues I thought I would face in running a business that attracts new patients, one of the ones I probably never anticipated would be that I would have to find a way to get new patients and make current patients confident in an era where people felt scared to go to the dentist. And never did I think we would face that. So it's been an interesting 3 months here. So let's get into it. How do you increase patient confidence? Well, you know, one thing we have to do is sort of take some perspective. You know, over the past 3 months, the shifts have been so huge, and we'll talk about all of these. And one of them has been that there's been a shift away from as many searches for a dentist. So there's not as many new patients right now going to the dentist. So the focus has shifted to the current patients. A lot of missed appointments and a lot of changing attitudes. And I think, you know, those things have to be addressed as you get back. We've seen practices open up. One of the things we have a great advantage of is that we have, having been in business for so long, we have probably 1,500 or so practices that we keep in close contact with. We have a lot of data. We listen to thousands of phone calls from patients to dental practices as part of our service. And we get a lot of that feedback. We understand sort of what's going on from the mood of the patients and the potential patients. So we'll talk about some of those things as well. And one of the things you should probably know, if you don't know this already, and how can you not, right? If you're paying attention to everything that's going on, the reaction to this virus has been interesting in that there's really two distinct camps and attitudes that are really developing. And you see it, gosh, you see it in political responses to it. You see it in my own family. I've got, you know, teenagers, and some of them are not nervous about it at all, of course. And other members of my family are very nervous about it. So, and we're seeing the same thing in dental patients. You know, as we listen to these calls, many of the patients are very frightened to come back. And I'll tell you, we'll talk about this too. Equally, if not more important, is the attitude of the team and the staff. We're seeing that from everybody. And you sort of have to start with yourself, the dentist and the team, before you can carry that attitude on to the patient, the potential patient. So, you know, about 50% seem to be very nervous about it. The other half don't seem to be as nervous about it. And so you have to understand that as you're messaging to your current and potential new patients. So current patients right now, as we're hearing from our clients across the country, especially certainly the ones who are opening back up, and some have been up for quite some time now, is that the current patients are filling the schedules. And in fact, interestingly enough, there's a small DSO we work with out in Massachusetts who shared with us some data that they got from in working with the ADA. And so I can send you the source of this if you want, but just in the short amount of time that the practices have been closed in Mass, 2 million hygiene appointments have been missed. And I mean, it really is incredible. I mean, Massachusetts has 6 million plus people and 2 million hygiene appointments already missed. So as you're opening back up, how do you get those folks back in with the so-called new normal, with the, all the different procedures that are in place, and the PPE and the longer time between appointments and all of the things that go with that. And one of the things we're telling our clients is to use the softwares that are out there, like CareStack and others that have the intelligence built in that can help you say, okay, when was this patient last in, and so forth, and help you prioritize and plan. But that's no easy thing to deal with, with all the missed appointments. And so that's one of the trends we're seeing is as these practices are opening back up, you're having to focus on the current patients and the ones that you've missed so far. So on the new patient side, there is still plenty of, as much as it is down, there are patients still in the mix. And so it's about 50%, anywhere from 50 to 80%, depending on what part of the country and what we're using to track that is the number of Google searches. So we have access to that data, and we can see that they're down about 50%. It's starting to recover slightly. It bottomed out in April from what we can see, and starting to recover a bit in May. One sort of tip here I can give you, whoever you're working with for your pay-per-click, you should be paying about half as much right now for your cost per click than you were back in February. If you're paying the same cost, then you've probably got some leverage there, because Google's not going to, of course, reach out and give you a phone call and let you know that things should be half price. So you're going to have to ask for that yourself. But it's about 50%, and in some places 80% down in search volume. So the new patients haven't gone away entirely, but they aren't all the way back yet either. All right, so kind of with that perspective in mind, let's talk about some things that we can do about it. So one of the things that and this is a lot of what I'll be talking about in my little presentation here is advice I would give to my clients anyway, without COVID-19 involved, but they're so much more important now that we're dealing with this unusual circumstance. And and one of the things that comes out when we're building a website or messaging for marketing with our practices is, why did you get in dentistry in the first place? What do you love about it? And what's so wonderful about dentistry? And one of the things I've seen happen during this time is that we've kind of all forgotten that, at least initially, with the shock of what was going on. And you kind of need to set a mission, and some of our clients are, are setting these 90-day missions, even if it's not the one that they, did with their practice consultant over the years, but maybe a shorter term one. These are actual ones that some of our clients are using. Let's smile together. Everyone deserves a smile. But if you think about that, it's doesn't have the focus on the disease or the danger. It's much more about how dentistry can change lives. And you can move throughout your messaging with these themes in mind. And it's so critical. Again, I'll come back to this over and over. Your staff and your team and yourself have to lead this. And so many of the staff members are scared to death and frightened to come back. And so you have to deal with that. We have a sort of a 6-point reopening procedure that we developed along with our clients. We didn't think of it. We surveyed and talked to all of our clients about it. And I'm happy to share that and follow up with anyone who wants that if it can help. So one thing that I would say not to do, and I don't know, Lynn, I don't know, you and I didn't talk about this in particular, but I don't like nickel and diming as a consumer. I don't like nickel and diming as a business owner. And I know that the PPE costs and all the things that we're all having to do to make things safe and effective in our environments now cost more money. There's no question about that. And I've heard from my own clients anywhere from $10 a patient to $35 a patient. Who knows? Maybe it's more. From a pure marketing perspective and making people feel good, they're going to see all of these things you're doing anyway, and having it as a line item on the invoice is probably not good marketing messaging right now. That's just my personal opinion on that. So some concrete things that you can do. Again, start with, this is kind of a silly looking picture, but start with a happy practice, happy dentist, happy business manager, happy team members. All of you together feeling good about it. And this is a true story. We listen to these phone calls, as I said, from our clients as part of our marketing efforts to help them with their call answering skills. And one of our practices was running a PPC campaign for tooth extraction. And we were getting a lot of traffic from it and not a lot of patients. And so as we did our research to find out why and listen to the phone calls, the lady answering the phone had referred away 9 patients to a practice around the corner because she was scared to have them come in. Okay, so it's actually happening like that. So again, I'm not saying she shouldn't be worried or scared or that those feelings are invalid. You just have to talk about those things ahead of time and make sure your team is comfortable before you can make your patients comfortable. So the big message, if anything I can get across today, is to communicate overly right now. Again, this is good advice even when there's not a pandemic, but it's critical now. And when I talk to my clients, most of them kind of gravitate towards a newsletter, an email, and say, okay, I've emailed my patients. They must know, everything I want to tell them because I've emailed everybody. And and we'll talk about this too. I've got a little slide here on that. That's only going to get you a small percentage. You need to use every possible avenue that you can to communicate with your patients now more than ever. And in fact, we have a little thing we call the 20% paradox on an email newsletter. So a typical practice that we might work with would have, so if you think email will get it done for you, a 3,000 patient database, of which they may only have 2,000 email addresses. And so if you just send out an email to those, we track all of this very closely. It's almost always about a 30% open rate. So if you just send one email one time about everything that you're doing to make their patients safe and comfortable, you're only going to get a small percentage to ever read that. So you've got to go back and utilize all of these things. And we'll send that email 3 times, to try to get a little higher open rate. And then I'll tell you another little pro tip here. You've got everybody in your database, their physical address at home. You can Geo Fence every one of your patients' home addresses and get a display ad in front of them to talk about what you're doing to make the practice safe. And so at least that they've seen it once on their smartphone or their computer when they're at their home. So that's one way that we get close to it. And about 80 to 90% is about the best you can get.
Hey, Tim, just a quick question for you. So, because we've had a question about this. So geofencing, that's a industry jargon or term. Can you kind of bring that down into layman's terms of what that means exactly and how that affects any kind of small business?
Yeah, I'd be happy to, because layman terms is about the only way I understand it as well. So geofencing is a term, and here's another thing I'll do too. And if somebody remind me, Jim, afterwards, that I've got a link to a webinar to a company that's just really good at it and explains it truly in layman terms in about a half hour if you really want to get into it. But the super short version is that you can put an electronic fence, so to speak, around any destination that you want. It could be a building, it could be a neighborhood. You put these geographic modifiers on it and say, I want an electronic fence around it. And then you combine that with a display ad that, and a display ad, if you're looking on your computer or your phone, anytime you see an advertisement for, whatever you've been looking at on the internet, or, sometimes it's because of your patterns of search, sometimes it's because it's been purchased and it's where you're located. And that's when the geofencing comes in, and these ads are served into the display of a browser, both mobile and computers. and you can say anything you want, and you can click on them and it goes back to your website or goes back to a page with more explanation. Almost, so compare that to a pay-per-click ad in Google where someone's searching for something and then the ads come up and they click on it. This is not been searched for. It simply comes up as an ad on your browser where display ads normally are. And most consumers are familiar with it as a follower type ad where they've looked at it and it follows them that way. But it's a great way if you just want to serve ads to a very segmented part of your patient base, you can do it very precisely. Does that answer the question?
Thank you. I think so. Yeah, we had another person ask about it, so we can come back in the Q&A aspect. But thank you for touching on that.
Sure. Another almost universal trend, although there's some legal and regulatory things you want to check with your own state and your own board on teledentistry to make sure you understand what your particular rules are in your state. But I do think that we're seeing teledentistry stay. I think it's going to stay even beyond the so-called new normal and have a part to play in dentistry. And specifically ways to have no-touch check-ins and any sort of appointment that might be 10 minutes or less, or 10 to 15 minutes, something like that, a follow-up visit, some sort of triage where the dentist wants to take a look at something to see if it is worthy of coming into the office. And so teledentistry is certainly a hot topic, and I think it's going to end up staying in some capacity or another as we move forward. But, okay, so this is Dr. Miles up in Virginia, and he sent this picture to us when he was all geared up. And after we laughed at him for a minute, we thought, oh my gosh, what is the patient gonna think about this, right? I mean, this is different than the last time they saw Dr. Miles. So, and I'm sure his PPE has shifted even more from this. This was during a time when he was having trouble getting everything. So, but the point is how do you have such a personalized relationship with your patient when you look something like this? And, there's all kinds of face shields and other things that are going on all over the place. And, in many cases, it's the right thing to do, right? Everybody's concerned, and there's some amount of comfort that the patient draws from seeing all of this, and it's the right thing to do. So you have to do these things that you see on the page there. Again, great advice always, but even more important now. As many personal calls, as many follow-up notes, as many personal touches that you can make with your patients, that's going to put them at ease and maintain that personal relationship. Because that's what dentistry is all about, and what we're, that's how we make those, build the practices with the personal relationships. And let's not let the disease get in the way of that, right? I mean, that's the most important thing. Okay, so.
You want me to go ahead, Tim, and just go to the next slide? You just let me know. There's a couple more here. It's fine.
No worries. And okay, so this relates to the struggles that we're seeing from as I talk to my clients. Tim, I've only got maybe I can only take in half as many as I could before, or maybe 2/3 as many, because we're doing all of these different procedures, and there's just there's no double bookings, there's no 2 columns, all the things that we have to do we can't do anymore. So one of the easy things you can do is expand the hours and make it easy for the patients. Again, we give this advice outside of COVID, but I think it's even more important now to give your patients, since there aren't as many slots during the day, give them some morning hours, some afternoon, late evening hours, maybe give them some weekend hours too. And we're seeing that they're getting taken up quickly when they're offered. Okay, Jim, what else we got? So, yeah, so I think that pretty much touches on everything. The important thing is that it's a moving target. You should know that having a good relationship and putting your patients at ease is not something that ever goes out of style. So that's always important. The way we do it and some of the things we concentrate on right now are a little different. We have to get used to it, but we can still do it. And I'm happy to offer. We've put a lot of time and effort, and you don't have to be my client ever. And I'm happy to share any of these things we've learned from our clients with anybody who's listening today and would like to, to see some of that information. So I'm open to questions if there's anything I can do to answer any. We got a little time here.
We do. I did bring up your contact information, so it's in front of you, everyone's screen there. Lynn, I'm going to turn it back to you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here for a moment.
Thank you. And Tim, thank you for sharing the information. And as we're, in this case, we're going to share a little bit of some best practices, but we want to give you the opportunity, if you have some questions, tee those up either through Q&A or through chat. Jim's going to take a look at those because we're definitely,
Sure.
I have some time here that we can answer some questions. But let's share some best practices that we're finding as we are reopening. And Tim really related a lot to this. Thank you very much for going through Geo Fencing. When we get it really to layman's terms, it's almost like the invisible electric line you would have in your yard to keep your animals in your yard. But this is, as you may mention, we're getting those on our phone, but it's most important now because we've been, in most cases, doors closed except for emergencies for in the neighborhood of 3 months. And so we definitely have an opportunity to get our existing patients back in, our recall patients from hygiene back into the office so we can get them back on schedule. And then of course we have all of those that the treatment coordinators have been working so diligently on, is to get those treatments. If you would, now we need to reserve the seat. And that is a best practice, is we're not necessarily confirming the appointment today for August 15th, but we are reserving the seat because of our social distancing. We want to ensure that we have a good indication of how many patients, if you would, we'll have in our office. And so if we have 6 phases, 7 phases, 12 phases in a treatment plan, reserve that seat all the way through, even if it is going to take you 12, 14 months, get it on the system. Practice management systems like CareStack, but for many more, will take that information. And then of course, you've got your window of confirming the appointment. And most people are using 21 days to do that. The other part that was made mention that in Tim's presentation is the no-touch check-in. You know, different states for teledentistry, certain states you can do, certain states you cannot do teledentistry, but the no-touch check-in is pretty much universal. And because we're minimizing social distancing and really minimizing and making our staff more efficient, if you would, at this moment in time, we have to be very confident in how we can exercise these no-touch or virtual check-ins. And I know that best practices, people are sitting in cars and waiting to come in. Well, in reality, that's what we do when we're waiting to get a table at a restaurant, right? So it's taking a lot of these retail behaviors into the dental space. And so again, as Tim's made mention, Chris has made mention, Jim's there as well, Black Ops, and we'll share my contact information for those that do not have. We do share best practices. We've been in the industry for quite some time, and it's very important to share the successes that we're having. And we all have the challenges as well. We're the ones that will make it vocal, and what are we going to do about it? So again, mine's a little complicated, but it's Lynn, L-Y-N-N, at blackopsmanagementsolutions.com. You'll see that momentarily. So I'm
And Lynn, if you want to put that in the, if you want to put that in the chat field, we do have a question here. If you want to enter your email in, and I think, Tim, you might have grabbed the political hot potato here about the PPE, because there's a question around that. So I know you shared your personal opinion, but this person wants to know, what are you hearing from your practices about, and the question goes back to being itemized as an additional fee for patients or being absorbed by the practice. And you mentioned earlier you have 1,500 clients. And so what do you hear anecdotally or statistically from the offices that you work with around this, charging out for PPE?
Yeah, and I probably wasn't clear. I don't have any problem at all, and I understand the business case for sure. That's not an insignificant expense that you're going to have to deal with as a business, right? So I'm not suggesting at all or giving the advice to not sort of recoup that cost somehow, but maybe absorb it, or maybe roll it into an extra $10 or $15 for your crown or something like that. Put it where it needs to be as part of the overall expenses of the practice versus, and I'm talking purely from a customer
Right.
standpoint. And again, I might be biased because
No, that's okay. I think this is a good spot for you to put your perspective out there, though.
I like a single price and not a nickel and diming, and it's $5 every time you ask for this and that. So I think that's important. And anecdotally from our clients, it is interesting that many of them wanted immediately to put that on there, just because it does feel, and there's pressure. I understand that, and it's a whole new world, and that's not surprising at all that they feel that way. And I think there's a way to recoup it somehow. You got to look at the business and see how it's running and understand how to do it. But but a line item directly to the patient, it's hard enough. Patients, sometimes going to the dentist is not the most exciting thing from the patient's perspective anyway. So you just want to make sure that you're not adding something to it.
Sure.
More.
And Jim, I'll add to what Tim's making mention too, from a best practice standpoint on the operational side is very much as he just made mention, it's a fee, it's time to revisit all of the fees. And so when you have some fee adjustments, the cost of supplies definitely has changed. And so we really do need this opportunity to revisit our fees. Certain states, the payers are giving you a form of reimbursement. That's great. That's for those states and those payers that are doing that, but it's not universal at this time. But it is a great time for fee negotiation and at the same time adjusting your fees. And it's expected at this moment in time.
Okay, great. And I want to encourage more questions. And this is kind of one I think targeted more for Chris. This person asked about, I think for practices, they describe it as an IT, like a black box. A lot of dental practices don't know like what goes into that monthly overhead, what's appropriate, and the perspective of how do I determine what's necessary and what's overkill?
Okay.
And just like your perspective on that.
There's a lot of different ways that question can go. Most offices, when you're purchasing your IT support, you're just getting basic support. They're just going to either give you a block of hours. If you have a workstation go down or a problem connecting to your internet, they're going to use those hours up to provide services. Some companies will do an unlimited block, which basically you'll pay, $500 a month or something like that for unlimited support. And they should be giving you a list of what's covered and what's not covered under support. But essentially, when they sign you up for support is basically the way the IT infrastructure stands right now is what they'll support. So if you need to make changes or installs or anything like that, those usually come at an additional cost. So if you're adding an operatory or if you're adding changing your network or putting in a new server, there'll be costs for migrating the data and things like that. Most of them will do the bare minimum for security. They'll put in, they'll make sure that your router is secure. They'll make sure that your firewall is set up properly. They'll make sure that you have endpoint connections or endpoint protection, but they will not do the monitoring and the annual assessments and things like that typically as a part of that support fee. So you'll have to make sure that you address that with them, now or when you sign up with them, make sure that you talk to them about that.
So Chris, question for you in regards to, earning the confidence of our patient base. And now that we are so much heavily leveraging the virtual type settings, right? How do we engage with our IT department or our service that might be supporting us in servicing our IT to ensure that we are HIPAA compliant, to ensure that we can actually receive and send information that we are going to be needing for new patient application, if you would, up to and including even transferring x-rays from a doctor to a doctor, because again, the virtual setting, the doctor may not be in the same physical location as an associate dentist is. And so sharing that information, how can we validate that we've got that HIPAA compliant standpoint? How can we even have the conversation? I guess that's simple.
I think that starts a lot with, I think to go back to the question about confidence, I think if your staff is confident that when they stick a sensor in a patient's mouth that the x-ray image is going to capture, things like that, it will increase the confidence of your staff, which will in turn help your patient experience feel a little more confident. So if you're walking into an office after being out for 30 days or 45 days or whatever we are now, and you don't know if those sensors are going to work, you don't know if the server is going to stay up to date, you don't know if the when you answer the phone, if the phone call is going to drop. I think those type things are the conversation you need to have with your IT team and let them know, hey, look, these are the things that my staff are encountering every day that decrease their confidence, and that in turn that plays over into their relationship with the patient or their interaction with the patient, and it makes the patient less confident in the return. There's enough stressful things going on, right? So I think the last thing we want to worry about is whether or not a phone call is going to drop, the server is going to go down, that type thing. And secondary to your HIPAA question, I think that just goes back to education, making sure that the staff and that the doctors are educated on what HIPAA is and what HIPAA isn't. and educated on, you know, how their interaction with the customer plays into those HIPAA regulations or those HIPAA guidelines, and things like, you know, unsecured email and the effect of that, and where their data is stored, and you know, the effect of ransomware and things like that. So a lot of it just comes to education and getting the team in the office more confident talking about those things.
Thanks, Chris. And
Yeah, Lynn, I'm sorry, I'm just going through the list here. I just want to make sure we have time. Do you mind if I go through the next question?
Absolutely, go for it.
Yeah, so Tim, one of your earlier slides, you showed about the, maybe you can go back to it, the Google traffic being a lot lower for people searching about dentists. And this question was specific about, you know, how do you see that changing or evolving? Is that a temporary behavior? What are your, and the question asker didn't give a lot more detail than that, but just maybe some more of your insights related to why the demand is so lower in that regard, the search queries.
Yeah, so I think that so we definitely saw a significant drop, because most of search queries are built around you know, searching and going to the dentist. And so as we got into that you know, into the mid-March, you know, I think we all remember, you know, the day basketball was canceled, and it sort of all kicked us in the gut, and we're like, oh my gosh, what is going on here? You know, I think that kind of behavior again just sort of dropped. No one was thinking about going to the dentist if they, you know, unless they sort of had an emergency. And so all of those kinds of patterns where people are out searching for new dentists, thinking about certainly any kind of elective procedure, all of that, you know, sort of dropped off the map for a while. And again, we saw it bottom out. And again, I say dropped off the map. When you're in the marketing world, you know, a 3% drop, everybody jumps out of buildings. So a 50% drop is, you know, is a significant one, but it didn't go away. It basically went down, you know, at least half. And so we did see it kind of bottom out in April. And then as practices began to start back a little bit, you see it start to come up. May was a significantly increased percentage. And I don't have the June numbers yet. It's a little early yet to kind of make any conclusions on it, but we think we're going to see it continue. How long will it take to get back to normal? I don't know. Now, all that said, we have plenty of practices, you know, and a lot of it's regional based, who are exceeding their new patient goals, you know, even pre-COVID. I mean, there's plenty of new patients, you know, depending on where you are, what your practice is doing, how, you know, if you want to get them or not. So there's plenty of new patients coming in.
Okay.
Still. We're talking about big terms. And I'll say that the differences between practices in parts of the country is drastic. So I have a rural client in Georgia who had the best 3 months of the last year in March, April, and May. For the last 12, I mean, he just rolls right through, and I mean, it's not as if he's a denier of any sort. My lights keep going off here. I apologize for that. So, and then I have a big client in Boston who, you know, still isn't open yet. You know, I mean, it's a big range.
Thank you. Lynn, sorry to step on your sentence there.
No, you're good. Do we have more questions coming in?
That's it for now. I don't know if there's something you want to touch upon. Sorry about that.
I would expand a little on what Tim's just making mention, because he and I share clients and we were from coast to coast, but those clients that we do support that do campaign the emergency patient, and they have a protocol and process in place to take care of that emergency patient, those are the ones that we're finding are coming back very strong. They were successful, if not stronger, this year compared to last year during the month of March and April, just because they were the only ones seeing emergency patient. And so, and I'm not making that loose. It was truly an emergency situation, but they now have become the experience is I'm bringing my family back in. So now it's becoming a true family affair sort of patient base. And so I do believe that recognizing patient, if that's something you can do, the emergency patient, having a campaign just on emergency patient is great. And again, going back to that kind of geo fencing and recognizing your patient allows that marketing to be very specific. If I'm trying to encourage my recall for hygiene, I can attract that very specifically. If I'm looking for treatment, I'll go very specific. If I'm looking for emergency, I can go very specific. And that also allows us from a social distancing and from how to really stage the day in the practice from an operational standpoint, when to bring in certain patients, right? So we can if we're pedo, we know when to bring in the kids. If we're going to be ortho, we might wait a little bit later in the afternoon. But we have the seniors that we want to probably bring in first thing in the morning, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning, if we can, as an example. Tim, you want to add to some of that?
No, well said. I would agree with absolutely all of that. That's perfect. That's stuff. I probably should have said some of that. Fabulous.
You did great. I would just I know that we've got just a few moments here, and I don't want to just hold people up on a call, but if we have any other questions, this would be great. And so, Jim, I'm going to pause for a moment just to see if any other questions are coming through.
Yeah, I think it looks like we're good. I think we've covered everything that you wanted to touch upon. So I think closing thoughts from the panelists would be a good place to go.
And let's do that. Let's start, if we can, Chris, if we can start with your closing comments, then we'll go to Tim.
Yeah, just I think the key to reopening successfully is just making sure that all your internal systems are in place, whether it's your IT or your equipment, your dental equipment, your people's training, your PPE as well. Just making sure that all those things are in place. Spend a few moments reviewing those things with those vendors, reviewing those things with those responsible for them, and then let that confidence go through.
And Chris, we do have one question that just came up for you specifically from Anne. How do you feel about, I don't even know what this means, maybe I'm mispronouncing it. How do you feel about Kaspersky for antivirus protection?
Kaspersky it's okay, but it's not a product that I promote a lot. They typically run a little behind on doing their updates. I'll just leave that. But I mean, anything is better than nothing. So don't get me wrong when I say go with a managed IT or a managed antivirus. Anything is better than nothing. It's just making sure that you have the most up-to-date virus awareness, or making sure you have the most up-to-date algorithms. And
I would just say, Anne or anyone else, Kristen and Tim, why don't you put your emails into the chat feature there?
Sure.
And so interested parties, just like Lynn has this up, can reach out to you, once this concludes. So Lynn, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris and Jim. So Tim, let's get some closing comments, and then we'll wrap up today's webinar.
Sure. So from my perspective, increasing patient confidence starts with doctor confidence and team confidence first. So, make sure that you and your team feel confident, have your plan together, know what you want to say and portray, and then communicate to your patients, and all will be well.
Tim, very, very well said. And to summarize, from an operational standpoint, is exactly that. The communication strategy has to be in place. The protocol or the processes to get communication out to the team is very important. And then in addition to that, communication is to ensure that we're doing this in a way that is compliant in every category that we're doing. So, we're definitely very busy. So I will just say, and I know I can see that Jim's probably getting this ready.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to step on your sense there.
You're good.
I presented too quick.
CareStack has been very supportive in Black Ops Management Solution and getting us the platform, if you would, to answer questions and to bring in this, again, best practices, sharing some and navigating through the challenges that we're having. So again, any questions you have, any concerns that you may have, you're always welcome to email Black Ops and we can turn that around. And I've given you my personal email to do that. And with that, I would like to say thank you, Chris. Thank you, Tim, very much. And I want to leave with Jim because he's got his teed up, ready to go. There's a virtual trade show coming up real soon. So all this is virtual. Talk about being compliant. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Again, this is not an infomercial on CareStack. If you want to learn more about CareStack, I know a lot of people out there do, but you don't want to come to a one-on-one demonstration. That's maybe too forward of us. So we do these virtual trade shows. The next one is next Wednesday. You can register by going to carestack.com or replying to any of the emails that you got from me. We'll make it worth your while. And again, it's kind of a no obligation group setting. On behalf of CareStack, I want to thank Chris Grimm, Tim Kelley, Lynn Campbell. Thank you so much for being generous with your time and putting together this worthwhile program. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So stay safe, everyone. Thanks very much.